Okay, we have a basic character now, and the character has some basic animation states. You can see his default state is this walk down, but it has the other states in there for a sideways walk and a walk up. And we want to figure out how to make it sort of automatically transition between walking down and walking up. For example, let's try walking down and walking up. That's easier one to do. All right, so what we'd like to do is set up some sort of condition to say, well, when should you go walking up? When should you go walking down? So let's say, if we zoom in here, we have walk down, we have walk up. Now, in theory, we could go from any state to any other state at any moment. Right? There's no reason that you couldn't go from walking sideways to walking down to walking up to walking down, and so on. So what we probably want to do is say we're going to do transitions from any state to the walking down state, and from any state to the walking up state. And I'll leave this entry to walk down for now. We'll leave the other two. So in order to make these conditional, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a parameter that's going to control when up or down is used. So I'm going to create a float that's going to be called y velocity. Okay, so when the y velocity is positive, it's going to walk up, and when the y velocity is negative, it should walk down. Right? So let's go here. Now let's double click on that. Let's see where. Oh, we have our transition up here. Getting a little bit crowded on the screen here. Let's put our animator on here and move it this way just a little bit. And now we have our walk down. We'll click on that. Walk up. And we have this transition here that's going to go to walk down. So let's see. Oh, here's another. We'll click on this transition here. So this is the any state to walk down. Right? And for now, I am going to say it does not have a fixed duration. I want it to transition really fast. So I want it to transition right away. So I'm going to say transition duration 0, 0, 0, 0. I'm going to walk down. And what is going to cause this transition? It needs at least one condition or an exit time to be valid. Otherwise, it will be ignored. Right? So let's create y velocity greater than. So if y velocity, that's moving up on the screen. But this is walking down. So we're going to say y velocity less than 0.05. Give it a little bit of leeway. Right? So if it's sort of just drifting, it won't really do anything. All right. And the walk up, we're going to do something similar. I don't know. Let's see. 0, 0, 0, fixed duration. So it's going to happen real quick. We're not going to allow it to transition to itself, by the way. Oh, well, we'll leave that for now. So now, let's say y velocity greater than 0 should be any state walking up. That's right. Greater than, and we'll say 0.05. All right. So, let's see. If we go to the game, see if we can preview this here, and we have to sort of slice the two windows, scroll this down a bit, and we'll hit play. And initially, so what's happening here? We seem to be frozen. But let's make our y velocity 0.1. All right. What's about if our y velocity is negative 0.1. All right, goes in the opposite direction. But you notice it kind of does wind up sitting there frozen like that. Now, why is that? Well, I think what's happening, I'm pretty sure what's happening, is this thing I started to show you. Here, if you're allowed to transition to yourself, if the state is allowed to transition to itself, it will wind up just re-triggering. So we're going to turn off can transition to self. And, whoops, click that. That's off, click that, and that is off. Okay, so it's not going to allow to re-trigger itself over and over again. So that's what was happening there. Right? So now we're walking down, because that's the default. If we said -1, that would be walking down. If we said 1, that would be walking up. So -1 down, 1 up. All right, very good. So that is sort of controlling things, but it's controlling things here within the animator window. So what we really want to do, of course, is to control things from the game. So to do that, we're going to put a little hero controller on here, and now this is going to be a hero. That's our hero. And by hero controller, I mean sort of character controller. So I'm going to call this char control. All right. And we're creating this. And somewhere now, let's see, we'll have character control. I'm going to double click on that script. It's opening on another screen, but I'll quickly bring it back over here. And 1 second. Here we go. Sorry. Hopefully. And I'm going to do this really, really quickly. So this may not be the ideal way to do this, but what the heck. Now, one more thing I want to be able to do with this is that I want him to be controlled by physics, right? Because I want an actual velocity to be changing here. So our hero is going to need a rigid body 2D. All right. And it is going to have a mass of 1 linear drag. Oh, it's kind of fairly normal things. If I hit play, I think he's going to start dropping downward. Oh, okay, there's no force on there. I think maybe gravity is 0. That's okay. Good. All right. So we have our character. It has a rigid body 2D on it. We have a character, our control thing here. So what we want to have happen is we want to say we're going to get the mouse input. So, excuse me, not mouse input. We're going to use the input system. So we're going to have a vector to my move. All right. And my move is equal to input dot get axis, and the x direction is going to be the horizontal. So horizontal, and that's going to get 1 axis. So we could call this vector 2. And the other dimension, the y dimension, is going to be the vertical. So, non-invocable. Oh, well. There we go. All right, so now my move is reading this virtual joystick, and I'm going to do something really, really simple. I'm going to say get component rigid body 2D, and that's going to give me the rigid body 2D of this, right? and I'm going to say velocity equals my move. Okay? So what that's going to do is going to say whatever the joystick is doing, that's going to set the velocity of our little character. Right? It's going to be from 0 to 1 in whatever direction, if I'm recalling correctly here. So move the rigid body as such. So let's see. So here's our camera, and you'll notice now if I move my A and D keys, or my directional keys left and right, they are moving left and right. Now up and down are also moving it in the correct ways. So this is also a little demonstration of the input system. Now, it hasn't changed anything about our animation yet, though. So what we want to do is now we also want to say we want to mess with the animator component. And I'm just doing a get. I just wanted to cut and paste get component here, and we're going to call it for the animator. Right, so we're going to get that animator, and we can say set float. And do we remember the name? It was it y velocity? Was it x velocity? Was it, let's see. Oh well. So much for being good at remembering things. So we come up here, we look at velocity, walk controller. Okay, it is y velocity because it's up and down. That makes sense. Whoops. So set float y velocity equals, and we could have just set it to my move y, I suppose. Right? That's one way of doing it. And I suppose if I did that, I didn't even need the rigid body 2D, but I like using the rigid body 2D because maybe it's not the joystick that's causing the motion, right? Say gravity was able to cause the motion, which it can. String float value, whoops, okay. Did this the wrong way. Sorry, do it that way. It is a parameter. It is not a setter. Okay, so y velocity is going to be set according to my move y, or it could have been also set according to, this is really what I wanted to do. Right, get the rigid body velocity y. So now even if I'm not changing motion according to a joystick, if I'm just moving around because of physics, it will still do the right thing as far as the y goes. Alright, so let's jump back and go to our game and hit play. And you'll notice now we're moving up, we're moving down, we're moving up. I'm using the W and S keys, or the arrows I can use, and it's automatically changing. Right? Now the default state, of course, is to walk down. So if there's nothing going on, when we look at the animator, you'll see that walk down is happening. Because certainly now it is less than that also. So that's where we're winding up by default. We'd have to get a little bit more elaborate. I'll leave that as an exercise to say, okay, well, what happens as you do left and right, for example. Or, you know, maybe now's a good time. We'll go ahead and do that. So left and right, I'm going to do according to the following. So I need a transition, make a transition to walk side. All right. So here's our walk side, and we'll do the same sort of thing. Settings, fixed duration 0. It's going to happen immediately. And I need to set a condition. So in this one, I could do the same sort of thing. Say, okay, y velocity, and so on, right? But what I'm going to do, I like to do this because the x velocity, well, okay, I'll do this. I'll do it the same way. I'll leave the bool as an exercise for you to figure out. Right, so x velocity, and we'll go to walk side. So we'll say that this, the condition is x velocity greater than, let's see, this is the tricky part, right? It has to be an and. So for it to cause this, we'd have to say x velocity is greater than .5, right? So how do we set this to true if it's or? We don't have the or here, so 0.05. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just say, well, I'm going to just take that for granted. And I'll also say that, well, let's see what we'll experiment. All right, so here's the case. We're going to do this. We're going to hit play. And let's show the animator over here. Right. So if this is 1, it has a hard time here, right? Because it's trying to transition in between a bunch of different states. And this is where things get tricky, okay? Because it's trying to go and flip back and forth between those different states, which is, which is tough because we have a couple of different things going on. So really we want to be careful when our transitions are caused by things that aren't necessarily related. So what we should say here, first off, walk side, check that one, make sure settings, it can't transition to itself. And to say, well, all right, here, walk down, I'm going to add an and to say, and x velocity is less than 0.05. Okay. And I'm going to do the same for walk up. X velocity is less than 0.05. All right. So now let's see what happens here. All right, seems to be doing better. And if x velocity is 0.5, you'll see now that it is walking to the side. All right, that's good. But what if that happens? All right, now what we're seeing happen is that the sidewalk is going to take priority over the top one. Oh, well, it's also what's also happening is that it's getting overridden by our script. All right, so let's go back to our script here and see what's happening, because we're in play mode. This is happening. So let's go ahead and let's fix that. Let's have the program tell it about that x velocity. Now, you'll notice I said that x velocity, I didn't have a less than. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do a shortcut, because I don't have a different left and right. So I'm going to take the absolute value of my left and right, and that's going to be x. Absolute value of left and right, and that's going to determine my x velocity, right? Because I don't have a separate animation for left and right. Okay. So we play our game. Doing nothing, sitting at center there. Let's see. Okay, now left, up, and down, and right. And the problem is that right, it goes that weird way. There's up, there's down, there's left, there's right. All right, so I'm going to use a trick that I use when I have only a single walk left animation or walk right animation here, is that what I like to do is say get component, and we're going to get to the component for the sprite here, the sprite renderer actually. And what I like to change is this flip X. Okay, that's going to tell me, is it moving left to right or right to left? I just flip the image on its axis, on its x-axis, right? So this is the x velocity. I'm going to say flip if this is negative. Right? So I can use a little conditional that says, okay, if this is negative, this becomes, if it's negative, it becomes true, which means yes, you have to flip it. If it's not negative, it's false, which means you don't have to flip it. There we go. Now I don't really have an idle. I should really have one so that it goes to an idle state. But I'll leave that for you to sort of work out the difference. All right, so there was a little example of using the input, using the state transition diagram, using multiple animations, and controlling it with a script.